What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. It almost feels like I'm saying that to myself after taking a whole year off. But a lot has happened and changed in that year. We bought our first house, I quit my job for something new, I built a new garage setup and studio to work my magic, and I officially bought my dream car I wanted since 20 years ago, playing Gran Turismo 3, a 2003 Nissan 350Z. This is my first time having a garage, and this changes everything. With my new tools and ever-changing and improving workspace, I can really do anything I'd like, and I'm excited to share that experience with you. This place isn't much yet, but we've come a long way to get here. And now, considering the weather looks like this, we're gonna work on that car today. Perks of having this new work environment. So the heat is on, and these 20-year-old rusty bolts are coming off. I didn't originally plan on making a full video on this exhaust, so I didn't film the removal. But I was surprised to find that with my impact gun, accompanied by various extensions, swivels, and impact sockets, I was able to remove all but two easily. One needed to be forced loose, using a leverage technique utilizing a floor jack and a breaker bar. The other simply needed to be ground away to set this old factory exhaust free. There was no saving it. So here's what we're starting off with. Though it may be quiet, it doesn't really sound that bad, but that's far from the point here. And just a side note for context here, at the time of recording these tests, we were experiencing some pretty serious sub-freezing temperatures, at some points with the wind chill below zero. And with that, the condensation and exhaust gases are definitely freezing in the air, causing what looked to be a lot of white smoke. The car is just fine. The exhaust on this car began to show its age, rotting out in structural places, causing leaks and poor performance. I recently was lucky enough to pick up my dream exhaust used for cheap. We're going to install that today and restore it to at least some of its former glory. This is an HKS high-powered true dual exhaust with burnt titanium tips. The truth is, it's definitely seen better days, but we're going to do our best to remedy that. For starters, obviously we're going to need the car up in the air. So I threw the car up on my new Esco jack stands. These are a pretty unique set. They're 3-ton jack stands, supported with a locking pin, instead of the conventional ratcheting design. They're also flat-footed, making them not only safer and more stable, but also far less likely to damage my new sealed floor. This isn't a sponsor or anything, but I definitely think there are cases where there's just the right tool for the job. And this is it. So as time goes on, if you guys are interested in a full review of these jack stands, please let me know in the comments. Before we continue on, there's going to be a few items that are pretty integral to this process. We have a set of Vibrant Performance exhaust flange gaskets, an exhaust hanger bushing tool. This is a pair of pliers that's pretty specific but very helpful in this situation. I will demonstrate how this works later. Some new exhaust hardware. Unfortunately, this being a dual exhaust, we're going to need quite a bit of it. I went ahead and got some Dorman brand zinc-coated bolts, nuts, and lock washers, and some medium-strength thread locker. This will prevent the exhaust from coming loose from driving vibrations. Once you have your factory or old exhaust off, truth be told, it's pretty much downhill from there. And I actually mean that in a positive way. As long as you have all the needed materials and tools, everything should come together fairly easily as long as you're prepared. Hang your new gaskets, position your new hardware, apply a small amount of blue thread locker, then mock up your new exhaust and tighten partially. We're going to wait until the exhaust is installed entirely before we tighten everything down. There is a window where your thread locker will cure. We're going to try to do it within that window. Other than that, with a little luck from the hangers, everything else should feel pretty seamless. And if you're installing your exhaust by yourself like I did, don't forget that you can use a floor jack as an extra set of hands when you need it. This can offer some pretty needed support as you tighten down the flanges together. If your case is anything like mine, the fitment of this exhaust was on point, which means everything needed to be in just the right position to get it to come together properly. And this is all bearing in mind clearance concerns with differentials, subframes, sway bars, etc. There's a lot of stuff playing against you here, and a lot of stuff that's helping you too. Good luck. Before we move on to the final muffler section of this exhaust, while we have the factory one out, this is a very good time to do a very simple, but also very common modification for the 350Z. If you are familiar with Z's, I'm of course referring to the bumper tuck. the lower bumper cover section of these cars is not only far from aerodynamically sound, but it also hides the part of the exhaust that we want to see. To do this, you simply remove some factory brackets and install that bumper cover section to the bottom of the crash bar. Upon further inspection, my clips were already broken, so any concern or hesitation in my case at this point was pretty null and void. I had nothing to lose, so I decided to send them home with some nice long screws and flat washers, also known as fender washers. Bigger is better, but you don't want to go too large. You do need a washer though, to distribute the force on the plastic against the aluminum bar. Otherwise you'll form some creases or maybe even crack your bumper, so be smart about this. Before I even began, I used my jack and some styrofoam to curve the bumper into the position it's supposed to be. Not only does this relieve the stress from you, but it also starts to relieve the stress in the plastic. It starts to almost want to be there even without the hardware if you wait long enough. First, drill some pilot holes through the bumper into the crash bar, then follow up with your new hardware. Once I had my first two finished, one at each end, I was able to lower my support jack. As you can probably see already, you could stop here. But if you're going to want it to look as OEM and uniform as possible, you're going to want to add more screws evenly spread across. I measured my distance across, divided by 3, and added 2 more screws. I was really pleased with the results of that. And with that, you can't even see the hardware from any normal viewing angle. Now we can finally install our final resonator and muffler section. And while we do that, here's a brief demonstration of those exhaust pliers I mentioned earlier. I really can't picture any better way to do this. And just like that, the install is done. But we're far from finished. So let's get the car on the ground, start up so we can check for leaks, and get to polishing away years of tarnish. It was even colder this day. Yikes. But everything is sounding great, and there's no sign of leakage. So let's move on. So it's still a snow globe out there. But no better perfect time to take care of the aesthetics of the exhaust and get some basic maintenance out of the way before we get back on the road. I did partially clean the exhaust before the install, but we're going to go ahead and start off with some warm water and Simple Green, my degreaser of choice. But it's going to take a whole lot more than that to get it looking like a mirror again. In come the reinforcements. We have some heavy metal polish from Chemical Guys and a Mother's Power Cone, a foam polishing pad drill attachment. The procedure became pretty tedious, but also very rewarding. With every pass, I saw the clarity of the metal increasing and more of a mirror finish. Some portions of the metal fortunately came right back to life. Others needed some extra time. After just a few passes and some fine-tuned spots, oh, we're there. This thing started getting hard to look at with my lights. Now to do the same to the other side and see what we can do with the tips. The tips are a little bit crusty, and it appears that they have been rubbing on an aftermarket bumper of some sort over the years. We'll do our best to reduce that. A mild abrasive like a Scotch-Brite is also a really helpful tool for refinishing some of the raw areas. I use this on the interior portion where the tips attach. Taking a brief moment to clean your hardware with the same foam pad is a good way to get everything clean and matching. Like a glove. Now that's much better. Beautiful. Now that's what I'm looking for. And with that, let's get the basic maintenance out of the way so we can hit the streets when the snow is gone. Back onto the stands we go. I dropped the under tray for easier access and cleaning. Now just to gather our supplies, I'm using some Mobil 1 5W30 synthetic and a Purolator 1 oil filter. I also took the liberty of grabbing an OEM Nissan oil drain plug crush washer. I really wanted to prevent leaks. You really should technically replace these with every oil change. No one does though. So we'll go ahead and get this draining. I've always strangely liked the way the oil looks when it collects in these splash guards. It's the little things sometimes. Now to toss that old crush washer and replace it with a new one from Nissan. So we'll just clean up the threads of the bolt with some parts cleaner, and then just seat the new washer to the bottom. Do yourself a favor and don't over torque your drain plug bolts. Doing this can make the washer fail, causing leaks, or even worse, you'll end up having to replace your entire oil pan. Unfortunately, it does happen. Just tighten the bolt until the washer is crushed and snug it tight. It's not too hard to go off a feel, but if you're ever feeling really unsure of yourself, in this case with the 350Z, it's just about 25 foot-pounds. A clean oil pan has always been my policy, that way it's easy to check for leaks later. Now for the oil filter, I like to clean up the mating surface once it's done draining, and then apply a small amount of oil to that O-ring so the filter seats properly. And for this, same rules go, don't over tighten, even less so with this one. One hand tight, don't go crazy. And now we can drop her down and add oil. This car takes a nice and even 5 quarts when doing an oil change with the new filter. Even though we can verify engine specifications, it's really best practice to start the engine and check your level. Now make sure your oil cap and your dipstick are back in position, and any tools or rags you may have used are out of the way. Then start up the engine. You don't need to let it run long, but just enough to cycle the oil through the system. Now kill the motor and let it sit for a moment so we can check our level. Perfect. We're ready to go. And now we finally get to let this thing sing. The tone and volume of this exhaust ended up being exactly what I wanted. Zero drone, loud when I want it to be, and tame when I don't. This one feels like a more mature choice. No farting trombones at 3 a.m. here. In all reality though, nothing beats the looks of this setup. So aggressive. Well, I appreciate you guys coming along with me for this little project to get this car back on the road. I hope at least some of this may have been insightful for anyone doing the same. And with that, we have a whole lot more to get done, especially with the Eclipse. So let's stay driven and motivated, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's easy to forget how much you've accomplished when your new goals stack up high. So let's not forget to be present and appreciate where we're at now. Anyway, until next time, take care.